Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the North Kesteven series. This is a large Lincolnshire district centred around the town of Sleaford. There's 75 parishes here, so let's take a look at one of them. Welcome back to North Kesteven again, everybody. Now, today I'm going to take you around one of the two villages which are glued together right on the eastern edge of the city of Lincoln. This together will be one of the longest walks I've ever done on this channel. We're going to start by heading that way into today's parish. If you go that way, that's Washingborough, but we're going to start off with Heighington. The North Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Heighington High Farm. This week in North Kesteven, we're in a place called Heighington, one of two villages on the southeastern fringes of Lincoln, which are joined together by a modern expanse of housing. The two do retain their own separate identities though, and this walk, which lasted well over 3 hours, will attempt to show their differences. They are very similar though. Both have a main street with their own facilities, they both have historic churches and chapels, and pubs, a total of 4 across the two villages. They each have railway history too. In this episode specifically, we'll be meeting the gorgeous Heighington Beck, which runs under the main body of the village. It used to power a watermill that produced flour. That old mill still stands, but it's now a block of flats. We'll also be discussing the history surrounding a playing field, which was bought purposely by the owner of a nearby house, purely to benefit him. The church here is actually a chapel, despite what the various mapping softwares might tell you. We'll discuss why that's the case here too. We're also going to take in a school, 2 community halls, and several brand new areas of housing which have expanded Heighington massively in recent decades. It all means high farm, and it's sometimes pronounced Heighington. Let's go. This is Canterbury Drive. It forms part of a massive housing estate that dominates the northern reaches of Heighington, joining it seamlessly to its neighbour, Washingborough. It blurs the line between the two somewhat, but the division follows a public right-of-way which cuts through this 20th century suburbia, and that's where this walk began. The estate also occupies the summit of a hill, whose steepish side sloped downwards to the north towards the River Witham and southwards towards the village centre. This isn't the only housing estate here, by the way, far from it. With a population of over 3,000, it's a good thing there's a bus service everyone can use here. Heighington is served by the number 2, which goes to Lincoln via Branston and Cannock. Off the estate now, we're briefly onto Washingborough Road, heading southeast towards the High Street. Heighington Centre is full of listed buildings. In total, the village has 23 of them, and most are in the historic village core. It's a sea of magnificent 18th century limestone houses here. Catching my eye with a gargantuan frontage was Heighington House, a girls' finishing school in the early 20th century. Running through the middle of this gorgeous village centre is Heighington Beck. We've met this before. The sheep wash in Branston is the same stretch of water. In Heighington, it's a nice spot to enjoy, and you can do just that with a cuppa from this cafe and a gift shop on its banks. If that's not your thing, you can always go to the Turk's Head pub instead, further up the road. It's a small one despite its outward appearance, but it still serves a decent selection of beer. Their food is also really good and excellent value according to some online reviews. They even make their own pork scratchings. So from where I parked on Canterbury Drive, it's taken me about 20 minutes to walk from that point to the centre of Heighington. And even though Washingborough and Heighington are connected these days via a massive expanse of 20th century housing, they still have their own identities. And Heighington is the more clustered of the two settlements. Let's carry on down the high street and see what else it's got. Let's talk post offices now. The old one seen here is an instantly recognisable building thanks to its striking green tiled front. It was once operated by the Robinson family, who rebuilt the front and ran it as a general store for 2 generations. The modern post office is inside this spa store just up the street. Next we come to the second of the 2 pubs. This is the uniquely titled Butcher and Beast, the only pub in the country with that name. It used to be called something else. White's Directory of Lincolnshire suggests it was known as the Bull Inn, before later becoming the Bull and Butcher. Next to the pub is the Village Hall, a corrugated iron structure. This was built in 1898 after fundraising by the local Ladies' Sewing Circle. It used to be brightly painted a few years ago. The paint job was done by 2 prisoners from Morton Hall in Swinderby. It's a little different now though. Moving on up the high street, here we have another hall, this one the Jubilee. It stands on the site of a former girls' school, which was purchased by the parish council after the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977. The hall was completed a decade later and nestles neatly between the old stone cottages. Some of these houses have former uses. Take this one for example, it's an old dairy. This road runs out into the Fens, hence the name Fen Road. It passes through a separate part of Heighington called Common Square, which features Cobb & Sons farm shop and a small industrial estate. For us though, it's Almond Avenue next. This is an area of council houses built in the early 1950s. During the war, this was a barley field whose crop was cut by a horse-drawn binder before being carried to Manor Farm by horse and cart. Off this road is a short footpath which runs into a patch of trees. Yeah, it does feel like you're heading into the middle of nowhere, but actually this path serves a purpose. What it's doing is it's taking us towards Heighington's main sports area, and that's the next thing on our list. Heighington has 2 sports fields. This is the main one off Potterhamworth Road and one of the 3 home grounds used by the local community football team, HBW United. HBW stands for Heighington, Branston and Washingborough, and their other 2 grounds can be found in those other villages. This ground also features a rather interesting looking rock. Couldn't find anything about this, but I thought it was worthy of inclusion nonetheless. Heighington Cricket Club, members of the Lincoln and District League, also use these facilities here. It's all housing next, so that means it's montage time. Now, at the end of this network of narrow, tight, one-way streets, we come to the church. But the church here in Heighington is a little bit different to ones we're used to, because it's not actually a church, it's a chapel. Let's go and have a look. Dedicated to St Thomas, Heighington's church is not actually a church, even though it is used as one. The building is, though, a former church of 12th century origin, and it's Grade 2 listed. It was restored in 1619 as a chapel of ease by Thomas Garrett, a fen adventurer of the fen drainage scheme. Originally it would have been thatched. The outward appearance of the chancel used to be brick until, in the mid-19th century, it was faced in stone so that it wasn't mistaken for a Methodist chapel. The clock on the tower is Heighington's War Memorial, dedicated to all those who perished in World War I. Now, speaking of chapels, here's an old Methodist one, dating from 1848. Heighington's Methodists originally worshipped in a barn in 1815, before their first chapel was erected in 1820. Today, this is occupied by Skeet Print, a print management company. Next, we come to another recreation ground, this time on Station Road. Facing this to the north is a property called Beckfield House. It was once owned by Robert Wright, and to prevent buildings spoiling his outlook, he let this field to the village for an annual peppercorn rent. It now has a playground and a bowls club amongst its features. Time for a parish notice board, I think. Here's one in front of the bowls club. Job done. If you look across this field northwards, you'll see the entrance to Beckfield House. It's an old people's home now, after being sold in 1957. Robert Wright died in 1933 and his widow in 1956. After walking across the park, we come to a bridge. This is carrying Station Road over the Peterborough to Lincoln railway line. Heighington's former station, which was called Branston and Heighington originally, can be seen from this bridge. It closed in 1964, but as ever, the line remains open to this day. And this here is the entrance to the station house, just a bit further down the road. Technically speaking, walking down this road is not what you're supposed to do. You are supposed to go along a path which runs alongside the road, but it's down a dip. It runs along the edge of the recreation ground that we passed over a few moments ago. But made sure that I was seen at all times. It helps to wear this thing because obviously it's a safety thing rather than just a walking advert for TVI. Okay, so now that we've passed the station, we are carrying on down Station Road. We're going to take a left turn in a moment and we're heading towards a school, and we'll be into another residential estate before we hit the border with Washingborough. Our last section sees us pass through another housing estate, this one much more modern than Canterbury Drive. In doing so, this once again takes us over Heighington Beck. In past times, this water was used to power a mill which ground flour. The building still stands on Mill Lane, but it's now a block of flats. Heighington's milling history is preserved by way of Millfield Academy, the local school. Heighington used to have a grammar school. It was attached to the church until 1885 and later moved to the Thomas Garrett Arts, Crafts and Heritage Centre. It finally closed in 1976. Here's a quick bit about Heighington's Golf Club for all those interested in the sport. Bracken Hill Golf Club sits to the south of the sports ground on Potterhamworth Road. It's a private heathland course established in 2004 and has a full 18 holes. It's named after the nearby Bracken Hill Farm. Now, if golf's a bit boring for you, Heighington can offer something far more immersive. Just south of Common Square is the Lincolnshire Airsoft Club, which has been in business since 2008. Airsoft is a team sport where players simulate a military skirmish by firing plastic pellets at each other using low-powered replica guns. The pellets are typically 6mm BBs and are propelled out of the barrel by a small burst of compressed gas. The replica guns look similar to real firearms, but use mechanisms specific to airsoft, such as a quick spring exchange system or a blowback system. The sport originated in Japan. The Lincolnshire Airsoft Club operate 3 sites, one between Saxelby and Newton-on-Trent on the A57, another at North Willingham on the Lincolnshire Wolds, and their main one is here in Heighington. This one is known as Farm CQB. The farm feels like a maze with all the safety and security of high walls taken away from the players, meaning that each game is a true test of a player's skill and teamwork. Although the farm is an airsoft site, the LAC did not lose the essence of the original farm on which it's built. Relics of its past, like agricultural machinery and paraphernalia, are scattered all around the authentic farm buildings that have been caringly renovated by the staff, owners and members of the Lincolnshire Airsoft community. And after breaking off the walk at a footpath close to the parish boundary, we are done with what is effectively part 1 of this route. In part 2, we'll see the other village, Washingborough, and we'll be learning about everything else that make Heighington and Washingborough one big settlement. See you later. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.